Well, it's 5 o'clock and I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Saugeen Shores Committee of Adjustment on Monday, August the 21st, 2023. We have a couple of public hearings on the agenda tonight, but the first order of business is the land acknowledgement, and I'll ask Councillor Stack to read that tonight.
We acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which consists of the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash unceded First Nation. We understand this land holds immense significance to the people of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. We appreciate those who live and work alongside us today and who continue the traditions of their ancestors as stewards of the land we are privileged to inhabit. We thank them for their contributions they have made in both caring for the land and in shaping this community. We commit to truth and reconciliation, to acknowledging the truth about what happened to Indigenous peoples because of colonization, and to the reconciliation, which begins with each and every one of us. As a local government and public organization, we are dedicated to learning about Indigenous culture, to fostering a better relationship with First Nations and their people, and we commit ourselves to actions that move us forward on a path to healing along with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation.
Thank you. The next item is an acknowledgement of any pecuniary interest. Just before I do that, though, I just want to acknowledge that our newest member is here, Hope Wallace, and Hope is stepping into a role on the Committee of Adjustment. Nancy Darlington Smith was very helpful for the first half of this year, but circumstances led to Nancy leaving us and Hope joining us. So welcome, Hope. And now I'll ask for an acknowledgement of any pecuniary interest for anything on the agenda. You can declare now or at any point during the meeting. Seeing none, then I'll move on to the adoption of minutes. We have minutes before us from the meeting of June the 19th, 2023. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that acceptance? Moved by Councillor Stack, seconded by Member Martin. Is there any discussion? All those in favor then of these minutes? That carries. Oh, now I just see that Dana put on the agenda. Obviously, my eyes didn't jump down. Additional business did include the introduction of the new member. So I've already done that. Sorry for the out of order situation on the agenda. Anyway, item 6 is 2 public hearings. The first one, 6.1, is a minor. Oh, sure.
I think we have 3 sets of minutes.
Yes, we do. Okay, so we have also minutes before us, Committee of Adjustment minutes from a virtual meeting on June the 26th, 2023. Can I have a mover and a seconder for those minutes? Moved by Member Zimmerman, seconded by Councillor Stack. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Those ones carried. And then we had Committee of Adjustment minutes related to a special meeting, which was held on July 17th, 2023. And can I have a mover and a seconder for those minutes? Moved by Member Martin, seconded by Councillor Stack. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. And I think I'm going to have Chad sit next to me every meeting now because he's good, keeping me on track here. So I've already introduced Hope. I'll just introduce her again. Our newest member is Hope Wallace. Now we'll move on to the public hearings. The first one is item 6.1. It's a minor variance application A-23. It's related to Golf Links Estates Limited. The address in question is 1079 Waterloo Street. And I will ask the planner to make her report.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So I am presenting tonight on a minor variance application. This is for a site located in the north end of Port Elgin. The application is seeking to reduce the rear yard, increase the lot coverage, and reduce the exterior side yard for the existing townhomes that have already been constructed on Waterloo Street. And the application is also seeking to reduce the rear yard and increase the lot coverage for the townhomes to be built to the rear of those existing units that will be on a private road. If approved, the applications would facilitate a part lot control exemption application for the townhomes on Waterloo Street so that those could be sold as individual units and to allow for the remaining townhomes to be in a condominium format. We have reviewed the applications based on the 4 tests, and we find that it has been, all of those tests have been satisfied. We did circulate to agencies and received comments back from a few agencies, including town staff, who have no objection to the applications. But there were no public comments received on these applications. The agent for the applicant is here as well to answer any questions, but I'm happy to take any questions now if there are any.
Thank you. Dana, would you like to speak? Or you just you're welcome to speak if you'd like to.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just be
Or
fairly
maybe
brief.
you could just introduce yourself first.
Of course. Sorry, my name is Dana Kiefer. I'm a senior development planner with Cobite Engineering. Just maybe wanted to give the committee a little bit of background on this. The lands have been site plan approved for quite a while. The direction of the development changed. So the street fronting townhouses along Waterloo were built. A standard condominium was initially proposed. The developer decided to go a different route. So what we're going to do is do a part lot control application on the front, take the 12 townhouses that have already been constructed off. They are going to be freehold. So those will be an individual ownership. On the remainder of the property, a 50-unit vacant land condo is proposed. There will be 22 dedicated secondary suites included in that for a total of 72 units. A little bit of everything in this development for everyone. So we've got freehold, we've got condo, we've got dedicated rental. So the reductions that are proposed really are just about putting those houses on individual lots. And that's why they've been raised at this time. They weren't raised in the part of site plan because at that time it was all going to be one large lot and they didn't trigger any of these amendments. I'm happy to take any questions should the committee have any.
Thank you. Are there any questions from any members of the committee? Member Zimmerman?
You had stated that the initial intent, if I heard correctly and read correctly, was condominiums, and that the new large space would also include condominiums. What assurances are there that we aren't back here seeking a similar variance in the future if this one's granted?
Through you, Madam Chair. So the condominiums are different. Initially, it was proposed a standard condominium, and now a vacant land condominium is proposed. But we are applying for a vacant land condo. The variance has to go through first prior to applying. So it has to comply with the zoning bylaw. So that's it. We're just in the order of operations at this time.
Go ahead. Member Martin.
Focusing on the effect of variance resulting usage of yard. Guys got electricity here. I'm focusing on the effect of the variance on the resulting usage of the yard and the lot coverages on the existing 12 townhomes. In your report, it's a reduction of the rear yard for these 12 units from 7.5 meters to 4.55 meters. So that's about a 40% reduction of that yard. And the reducing of the exterior side yards from 4.5 meters to 2.01 meters, which is a decrease of more than 50%. And then the increase of the lot coverage is up 35% from 52.3. Oh, sorry, is up from 35% to 53.3, which is an increase of 17.3. I'm interested in your conclusion on page 7 that says there is sufficient amenity area in the patio and remaining yard space for these units. How did you arrive at that conclusion? I'm just concerned that there's such a radical shrinkage in the amount of free space for those units. How did we arrive at that conclusion? That there is sufficient amenities?
Yes, thank you through you, Chair. Thank you for the question. So when evaluating it, it's not necessarily the numerical value of the change that we look at, but what the impact to the residents and neighboring properties would be. In this case, the site has been site plan approved. So the layout has been approved with that amenity space in that backyard as already laid out before you. And so there is sufficient space for the private users for that immediate patio area and some grass area as well for landscaping and stormwater purposes. And that has not changed from the site plan that was originally reviewed by the city as well. In terms of the side yard setbacks, there is still space and visibility on sight lines, basically because there's been no reduction to the front yard, which contributes to that. So there is still visibility around the buildings on either end. And the layout of the original private road has not changed from what was approved through site plan as well.
Supplemental, Madam Chair, through you. But I just want to make sure, because I'm getting this right. There's still a substantial reduction of the backyard to these units. Am I correct in that?
Yes, there is a reduction.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Stack?
Thanks. Just maybe two quick clarifying questions. Just sort of, or sorry, one clarifying question. And maybe you said it and I just was spaced out, but what's the basis for the decision to move from condo to freehold?
Through you, Madam Chair, just a business decision.
Oh, some more. Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Any further questions?
If everybody's spoken, I would have one more. Just to follow up to Member Martin's questions, and forgive me if I'm not understanding the order of process in the most logical way, but if this application or if this business decision had been made early on, I wonder whether that would have gotten approved, because it's not built and it's not complying with what I understand the requirements to be. And that leads back to my earlier question. Respectfully, I worry that this is a bit of circumventing of process by having something that's a condo and now freehold. And I think the business decision is perhaps monetary. I think you can get quite a bit more for a freehold. So that's where my worry comes in. And I think it's something that is not minimized, and perhaps is even more now that I've heard the responses to the other questions. So when you say business decision, could you add a little bit more to that? And I understand that we're talking about, is this a minor variance, but I'm really worried about the potential for a circumvention of process here.
So there's a couple things, maybe I'll elaborate a little bit further. Sorry, I'll elaborate a little bit further maybe. The entire property is site plan approved. So the design of the rear lands is approved. That'll be what is built there. Secondly, it's all fronting onto a private road. So we have taken the majority of the road frontage off. There aren't going to be very more opportunities to make anything freehold from that property. Moving forward, it will be a condo development, and it is site plan approved. So what the town has written into their site plan agreement is going to be built, or further amendments will be required to that agreement.
Can I just ask, this is part of a much larger project. Maybe you could just make a comment about the other elements, because this is just one phase of a much bigger development in the area, correct?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, you are correct. It is one block in the Summerside subdivision. So around it is single family houses, there's apartments, there's a very large subdivision, and this is just one block that a developer has purchased and is developing.
And Summerside probably maybe predates your involvement with Cobita. I don't even remember the date when all of the Summerside's approvals started to happen, but it's been a development that's been quite a few years. And, you know, they have blocks up into the 50, 60, whatever numbers already in terms of the different phasing. Are there any further questions? Councillor Stack?
I think it's partially a comment, partially question, maybe just sort of in the interest of sort of maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, just kind of interpreting what the concern is. I think what I'm hearing from other members, and as a council, I'll just raise the concern, is that obviously these are livable accommodations. If they were, acceptable to the condo, there's no reason a person couldn't live in them as a freehold. I think the concern, and again, I'm just trying to do a bit of interpretation here, is that, I think they just want to hear that this was a decision. I won't infer why you made the decision, but that this isn't going to be in future developments, whether it's I don't think it'll be on this block, but in other ones, that there isn't going to be an effort to move from condo to freehold, and an effort to put, I think what I'm hearing is more homes in a space that would otherwise be permitted under a typical freehold site plan.
Through you, Madam Chair, if I just may make a comment, it has been taken a large amount of our staff time at COBIDE to unravel this. So it's not a decision that was made lightly, and it likely will not happen again in the future.
Thank you. I think there's an element in here that relates to the private road situation, that there's certain kinds of possibilities on private roads and certain things that aren't enabled on private roads. So the private road situation in there is definitely controlling some of the potential as well. Are there any further comments? Oh, go ahead. Director of Development Services.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to create an opportunity for to Karina perhaps provides some additional clarification on the nature of the reductions that I think are some of the concern. I think there might be some additional information that Karina may have that might increase the committee's comfort with the decision and the recommendation, if I may offer that opportunity.
You certainly can. Go ahead, Karina.
Thank you, through you, Chair. The one thing I did want to highlight is that when we're evaluating changes and variances such as these, we look at it relative to the bylaw requirement. And so we did, and I did outline in the report what the bylaw requirements are and what the request is. We do find that the reductions in the rear yard, as well as the changes to the overall lot coverage, are appropriate. And the other thing I would highlight it too is that we have seen similar requests in other townhouse developments in the north end of Port Elgin, as an example, which were approved by the committee or approved through the zoning bylaw process through amendments to those various subdivisions as well. So I just wanted to share that as well.
Thank you, Karina. I appreciate each and every member, though, when you have a question or a comment or a concern about any aspect of an application, please feel free to ask it. Space is important. So whenever there seems to be a reduction of space, it's a good point to question whether it's a reduction in a setback or a reduction in a overall coverage or a backyard situation. So I appreciate those questions myself and have them as well many times. Well, we have, if there's no further questions, we have an opportunity to make a decision on the application. I would welcome a motion. There are basically limitless possibilities, but one would be to grant it, one would be to refuse it, or then there's some custom opportunities after that. So if I could, the one that was before us has a recommendation is to approve. So I'll just read that one first. The application, so the motion could be the application for minor variance from comprehensive zoning bylaw 75-2006 is hereby granted subject to the following conditions. Number one, that any future development on the property conforms to the provisions of the zoning bylaw. And number two, that the decision applies only to the proposed development as indicated on Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. And the reasons for approving would be that the variance maintains the intent and purpose of the official plan. The variance maintains the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. And the variance requested is desirable for the appropriate and orderly development and use of the lands and buildings. And finally, that the variance is minor in nature. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that motion? Moved by Councillor Stack, seconded by
Hopewell Alvarez, second.
seconded by Hope. Is there any further discussion? Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair. This is a really, I'm struggling with this a little bit in terms of it meeting the 4 criteria and the good work that was presented by the staff, and I think it was Ms. Smith. I can't help but feel like this committee is being used to allow for a more lucrative business decision, and that's very troubling to me. That said, looking at it within the scope of are these minor? I continue to think on that prior to the vote, but it's a really unsettling feeling to have this presented from the business case rather than from what's necessarily good for the community.
Member Martin?
Mr. Martin, I'm sorry to interrupt. You don't have your microphone on.
Sorry about that. My focus is on the effect of the lot reductions and the increase of coverage of the proportional coverage on these particular existing lots and the 12 existing lots. When one loses the backyard, people tend to put more stuff on their front yard, which becomes an eyesore. When we're looking at the usability of homes, backyards are should be spacious enough, as I would think envisioned by the original bylaw, to allow people to enjoy that backyard within a certain number of square feet, or square meters, which seem to be envisioned by the drafters of the original bylaw, which we're now seeking to vary. So when the rear yard is at about a 40% reduction, the lot coverage is increased by 17.3%, and the side yards, although not as important for these 17 or the 12 existing townhomes, are decreased by more than 50%. I can't help but think that there is an impact on the amenity area in the patio and remaining yard space for these units. And based upon that, I am tending, and although I'm keeping my mind open to any comments which are after mine, I wish to vote against the variance applications on 2 specific grounds. That the variance as suggested do not maintain the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, as they do not provide for sufficient amenity space and buffering between the properties. I'm leaving out the drainage consideration because this does facilitate with the condos, the drainage is outlined in the report. I also am opposing it on the second ground, or I'm tentatively opposing it on the second ground. The application is not desirable for the appropriate development of the land, building, or structure, because although the application may allow for more variety in housing, tenure arrangements, in my respectful submission, it's outweighed by the cost to the quality of the enjoyment of the occupation of the existing 12 townhomes. So that's my position, subject to other comments, and I am keeping an open mind regarding this.
Councillor Stack?
Again, I don't want to seem over impassioned on this. I'm not either way. I think just acknowledging that, I think we have to acknowledge that if this was a condo, this would be permissible and people would be using the accommodation. So I hear the concerns. These types of minor variances do come up from time to time. In this particular instance, I'm trying to recall that if these were condos, people would be living in them and enjoying them, and hopefully. And so I don't think the quality of life changes substantially because you move from a condo to a freehold. And I think the other consideration is that the market will dictate. So if people don't want to live in the residence that they see in the, in the number of the rear setback and everything else that they have, there's nothing forcing them to make that purchase. So ultimately it'll be the market that decides whether these homes merit purchase, and it may open up additional accommodations for folks who may not be able to afford a large freehold home elsewhere in the community. Just something to consider.
Thank you. I'm going to backtrack and ask a question of the planner. The townhouses that would be shifting over to freehold status, what is the zoning on that little bit? Are they zoned R3, R4?
Yes, thank you. Their zones are R3.
Okay. And has there already built already? Have they been built so as to have additional residential units in them or potentially in them?
My understanding is that those units would not.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The rear portion of the development is what's going to have the ADUs. The front portion, the freehold portion proposed is not built to have ADUs.
Just before you go, so what you're saying is that the piece that's going to be built on private road, those townhouses will have the potential for secondary units or ARUs, additional residential units, as I think we call them in our stuff. Those units, which will be townhouses, will have that potential, but these ones don't have that potential built into them right now.
Through you, Madam Chair, again, it's not the potential, it's site plan approved that they're going to have ARUs. It's not a potential.
Yeah,
it's,
but I
it's
mean,
gonna have it. Yes.
it's on the private road part.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
That's a point of clarification. Through you, Madam Chair, I'm trying to understand. And I'm not sure which one of the knowledgeable people will answer this, but we have condominiums that we're saying to take to freehold. What is the benefit to the community of changing the purpose?
Through you, Madam Chair. Really, it's just about offering different types of tenure arrangements. So condo development, you own a unit and then you own a portion of the common elements. So you own the road, you own the green space, you own the stormwater management pond, for example, and you pay condo fees to maintain all of that. Depends on the type of condo and how it's all set up. A freehold arrangement would be that you own a lot. So you own your front yard, you own your backyard. That is your property. Whereas generally the original condo concept here would be that you owned inside of the drywall. So I just wanted to reiterate again that this is not, the development isn't changing. What we're changing is how they're going to be able to sell the units. You either sell the inside or now they're able to sell the inside plus the lot by making it freehold.
Thank you. And the units that are impacted by this potential for freehold status, they all front on a public roadway. The other units are on private road. Thank you. Is there any further comment, question? I do just want to add a comment that I think it's right to question space being affected all the time. I think it's right to question that. It's important though also to look at an entire neighborhood, a very large area, and imagine that sort of the variety that works well in that space. And certainly, this is an example of where I think market pressure and also just the desirability of ownership is playing, a role in the way things are happening in Saugeen Shores and particularly in Port Elgin. I'm going to call the vote in a question call the question in a minute, but this is part of a much bigger subdivision, which has all kinds of housing in it. There's apartment buildings, there's townhouses, there's duplexes, there's single family units, there's condos, there's this, there's that, there's practically everything fit into the Summerside plan when it came forward an awful long time ago, and it's being built out. And we're getting pretty close to the 10th concession in terms of building it out. So, some of these pieces that we're seeing, and we have one on the council agenda tonight for the Summerside development too. Some of these pieces are just kind of putting the finishing touches on a plan now that the reality of construction and the reality of other things that have happened since the development of the subdivision plan have come into play. So is there any further questions? Councillor Zimmerman, or Member Zimmerman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate the good discussion. I appreciate the answers to the questions. When we think about it, the variance request is not desirable for the appropriate and orderly development and use of the lands and the buildings. And the appropriate and orderly development at the time that this was presented was for condominiums. It wasn't for freehold. And it was built to be maintained as condominiums. That's what it was approved for. And I guess I'm really struggling with that. I had done the pre-reading, obviously, and came in open-minded, but unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to support this as presented. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any further comments, questions? Okay, I'll read the beginnings of the motion again. It's the application for minor variance from comprehensive zoning bylaw 75-2006 is hereby granted, subject to the following conditions: that any future development on the property conforms to the provisions of the zoning bylaw, and that the decision applies only to the proposed development as indicated on Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. All those in favor? Those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is defeated.
Madam Chair, just a point of order. It's tied, right? It was 2-2.
Actually didn't see Hope vote. That's, oh,
Yes.
sorry,
Yes,
that's
yes,
why I
sorry,
said,
just wanted to make
that's
sure
why I
that-
said any abstention, sorry.
Oh, no, I couldn't.
Okay,
No,
thank
'cause-
you,
no,
thank
'cause-
you.
'cause I
I
went and
just,
saw her hand.
I really didn't see your hand come up, so.
So and I know.
So then
that
it falls to me.
it falls to you.
Okay,
which is what I
thank
wanted
you.
to point out.
That's why I hesitated there, because any abstentions?
I saw her hand.
Well, then my vote will be for the motion. So then the motion carries. My apologies about that. And please put your hand up high. Item number 6.2 on the agenda is minor variance application A-36. The property addresses in question are 223, 225, 227, and 229 on Saugeen Street in the former town of Southampton. And the application name is Ernest, and I will ask the planner to make her report.
All right.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'm going to introduce Dave. Dave is our planning consultant. He's working on behalf of the county, helping us through our volume of applications. So I'll turn it over to Dave.
Thanks very much. And through you, Chair, it's a pleasure to meet you all.
Excuse me, sir,
virtually.
your mic is not on. We can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Okay.
Nice to say that. As opposed to-
Not sure what to do about that.
Okay.
Nobody can hear me? Well, that's not good.
Can you just test your mic, please? Unfortunately, we're not able to hear you.
That to me.
At the
Hello.
bottom under mute, you might have to change it to headphones.
Yep, can you hear me now? Is anyone able to hear me? That's not good.
No, unfortunately, we still can't hear you.
Okay.
Madam
Hmm.
Chair, I can make the presentation on Dave's
Um,
behalf.
Thank you very much. We're going to proceed with Karina. Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. This is a minor variance application for a property in Southampton. It is for recently constructed or under construction 4-unit townhouse development. The proposal was subject to a zoning bylaw amendment application as well as related consent applications to facilitate the severance of the townhouse units into individual parcels. The zoning bylaw amendment had very specific dimensions for some of the relief being sought. And when the surveyor actually did the full survey of the site to facilitate the severance, it was found that the distances for some of the yard setbacks did not meet the originally approved zoning bylaw amendment in 2021. And so relief had to be sought for some additional matters as laid out in the report. So specifically the lot area, as well as the rear yard and the side yard. The side yard was actually requested through the zoning bylaw amendment, but did not get appropriately captured in the amendment itself. And so they are seeking that relief as well. The applications were reviewed based on the 4 tests. It does meet the overall intent of the official plan and the zoning bylaw. As noted, the dimensions are fairly close to what was originally being sought through the amendment, and this is just correcting based on survey accuracy. The applications were also circulated to the agencies for review and comment, and there were no concerns expressed other than some comments from the Conservation Authority indicating that permit approval is also required from that agency as well. And so the applicant has been advised of that. We understand there was some comments and questions coming from members of the public, just trying to understand the process that this application was going through and confirming that there was no further relief being sought or concerns being expressed with respect to that relief being sought. I'm happy to take any questions and I'll try to message Dave if there's anything I can't answer.
Thank you for stepping in, Karina. I know that the applicant is present. Would you like to speak, sir? Okay, just if you make sure you turn on the mic.
Good evening. My name is Dustin Ernest. I'm currently constructing the 4-unit townhouse in Southampton. What I want to make very clear is what happened when the foundation was being poured and installed. Nothing was intentional. If you look at the summary, one thing I want to point out is that the land parcel is actually slightly reduced and nothing is bigger. The overall building isn't bigger than what was proposed. Items 3 and 4 in the summary. It shows 3 meters to 1.18 meters. I want to note that this was actually 1.2 agreed upon. And all my drawings were submitted to be constructed and approved, and everything was approved based on that. So it actually went from 1.2 meters to 1.18 meters. So you can see such a small increment. Number 4 as well. 3 meters to 1.88 meters. It was actually 2 meters and it ended up being 1.88. So I just want to stress that nothing was intentional and just to show that it was agreed upon to be reduced initially. So if you have any further questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
So just to clarify what you said, the original application had already adjusted the side yard setbacks or the side yard requirements down to the 1.2 and the 2 numbers that you gave.
Yeah, 1.2
So
meters.
in the summary here, we've just reverted back to what the bylaw requires. Although, and you know, your indication is that there was an intermediary step there that already had made some changes. So these are slight changes from what was approved. Thank you.
Yes.
Are there any questions, comments from members of the committee? Member Zimmerman?
Through you, Madam Chair, do we know, have we been, I don't believe in our package, we saw that request for variance. So can the town staff also or can Ms. Smith or the person on the television confirm it was to 1.2? And not that I don't trust you, I'm just wondering, I don't see it as part of our package. So just to make sure we're crossing our T's.
Oh, so you'd like confirmation of the original?
Yeah, the original
yeah.
amendment.
Are
that
you
has
able
already been
to
granted.
quickly pull that up, Karina?
Thank you, through you, Chair. I would perhaps look at the larger drawing set that is included with the package. On there shows what the original application or site plan included with the original application was, and then in red shows the reductions. So just bear with me. Right. So if you look at the larger drawing set that has both the original site plan layout and the red line, 1.2 meters is identified as the minimum. And so that was the site plan that was included with the original zoning bylaw amendment application. And through the survey accuracy, it's now 1.18.
And for the other one?
So if you look at the westernmost limit of the property, 2 meters is shown, and the survey identifies 1.88.
Thank you. Anything further? I'll just take this opportunity to comment that one of the residents who submitted a comment was concerned about the drawings that they had access to. And I will just echo, from our perspective, the drawings are incredibly hard to read as well. I don't know how you improve upon that. But even, and you did improve a little bit this time because there was 2 drawings attached, but even when you're trying to zoom up or make the drawings bigger, it just distorts all of the information. So whatever you can do to improve the drawings for us going forward, that would be, I think, an incredible asset to our work here at the Committee of Adjustment. Are there any other comments, questions? Well, the report before us is asking us to consider the following motion, which is to approve. So I will read you the motion that could be before us with a mover and a seconder, that the application for minor variance from comprehensive zoning bylaw. Make sure I'm looking at the right one. The application for minor variance from comprehensive zoning bylaw 75-2006 is hereby granted, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, that any future development on the property conforms to the provisions of the zoning bylaw, that the decision applies only to the proposed development as indicated on Schedule A attached and forming part of this decision. Number 3, that the development be completed within 2 years of this decision. And the reasons for this would be that the variance maintains the intent and purpose of the official plan. The variance maintains the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. The variance requested is desirable for the appropriate and orderly development and use of the lands and buildings. And finally, that the variance is minor in nature. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this? Moved by Member Martin, seconded by Councillor, I want to elevate you to be a councillor, Chad. Member Zimmerman, is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion? That carries. Well, thank you very much. Our next meeting date is scheduled for September the 18th, 2023. And of course, that is pending applications. Do we know of applications that we have already? We do appear to have applications. So our next meeting will be September the 18th, 2023 here in the council chambers at 5 o'clock. I'd like to ask for a mover and a seconder for adjournment. Moved by Councillor Stack, seconded by Member Wallace. Member Wallace. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much.